You know what almost every parent says when their teenager starts to slip? Oh, it's just a phase. They'll grow out of it. But the truth is, sometimes they don't. And while parents are waiting and wishing, their child is slowly disappearing behind that closed bedroom door. So today we are here to say it loud and clear. ADHD is not a phase. It's a whole different way of being. And the cost of ignoring it is sometimes brutal for our kids and for us as parents. And we are so lucky because sitting here with us is a woman who has spent her life helping families see the difference before it's too late. She knows what parents miss. She knows the quiet signs most people overlook. This is someone we invite back again and again because she's truly unforgettable. Please welcome Dr. Louise Lockhart. Hi, Dr. Lockhart. It's such a
Hi.
pleasure to see you again.
Yes, Shpila, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I really appreciate that.
Amazing. For those who haven't met you before, could you take a split second and share a couple of things about you, what you do, who you are?
Yeah, so I'm a pediatric psychologist, parent coach, and I live in San Antonio, Texas. I have a practice that helps parents do exactly what you're talking about, really helping to normalize, identify, validate their child's struggles as well as their own. And so I've been doing this work for about 20 years. My practice has been here for 10 years, and I'm really, really passionate about this work. So I went through a lot of feeling misunderstood as a child in various ways, especially as a teenager. Had a good relationship with my mom, but didn't feel like we had the connection that I really needed and that she wasn't really equipped to handle. And so I really make it my life purpose to really help parents better understand their teenagers so that teenagers could feel better understood and have a better relationship with their parents. So that's why I do what I do.
Before we go on with this session, I just wanted to remind you that you can still upgrade to the Summit's VIP Pass. Besides the lifetime access to all the sessions, you also get the audio files, you get the workbook for each session, you get the expert action blueprint with key takeaways from each masterclass, you get the English subtitles, and really a bunch of other things that will save you tons of time and really make a huge difference with your kid and with your family relationships. So, if you're a busy parent and you want to get the most out of the summit, then I really encourage you to find the button somewhere on this page and go check it out. You can still get access at a discounted price before our summit ends. And now, let's get you back to the program. Beautiful, beautiful, and that's why we love you for your passion and for your mission. Um, let's start with this. We all know that teenagers. Are we kind of write them off as moody, as lazy, as being dramatic, right? But you've said that ADHD is something completely different, and most parents miss that distinction, until the damage is done, really. So if you had to kind of draw the very first line between typical teenager behavior and ADHD driven struggle, where exactly would you draw that line?
That's a great question. So, one of the biggest things that we see is that lots of behaviors are developmentally appropriate, typical, normal, but although they can be very irritating, and it doesn't mean that there's something abnormal. So, I don't want people to get into the place where they're diagnosing everything. Well, oh, my teenager is sad, they must be depressed. Well, the fine line between typical and what could be diagnosable is function. How are they functioning? How is it impacting their functioning? Whether it's sleep, appetite, mood, friendships, schoolwork, performance, all those kinds of things. So a typical teen behavior is inconsistent, it's situational, it changes with motivation or consequences. It comes and goes. Sometimes they have bad days, sometimes they have great days. That's just normal. So yes, they're going to be in a moody phase because they didn't get enough sleep, or they had Cheetos and Coke for breakfast. I mean, like, so these things are going to affect them. ADHD is more consistent in terms of the struggles are rather, let me say, persistent. They're persistent. They happen across settings, usually two or more settings, and they don't improve simply because you tell them to try harder or focus harder. And it is something that you'll see because ADHD is a dysregulation disorder. So people think, oh, it's just about attention. Well, I've seen lots of ADHD clients who are straight A students, and they can be amazing. They could be gifted. They could excel in sports and have amazing friends and be popular. So just because they have ADHD doesn't mean that they're not functioning, but there's something that's getting in the way. So maybe, for example, you have a student who, yeah, they get straight A's, but they are working their tail off to do that, and they're not getting enough sleep. And what should take them 30 minutes to complete an assignment takes them 2 hours because they get so distracted. And it's this consistent kind of thing where they cannot focus, or they can't regulate their attention. And also it's a dysregulation in terms of affecting their mood. And so they might feel more moody or more depressed or more anxious because they feel like, why is it so hard for me? And it's so easy for everybody else. So, what I often hear from parents is they call their ADHD teen lazy. And it's not lazy, it's the neurological wiring. They're wired differently. And so it does take them more effort, and it's exhausting because they're at school all day or they're at practice all day or they're doing their homework and they just cannot move forward at times.
That makes sense. Um, I believe most parents, they kind of secretly know something's there, something's wrong, but they somehow they don't seek help. Like they wait, they hope it's a phase and it will pass because it's teenagers, right? Uh, but we know that the cost of that denial really is huge. So, in your experience, what is the real reason that parents actually delay all of this?
Oh,
Why are
yeah. I
they
mean,
denial?
yes, that's a great question because a big one is they're afraid of labels and stigma. They don't want a label slapped on their teen and like now they have an excuse for being lazy. They have an excuse for why they're failing. And so, or they're just afraid. They're afraid of what that label might mean for their teenager, that it could destroy their self-esteem or their identity, or now that becomes their identity. And a lot of parents, like you mentioned earlier, hope, well, it's just a phase. They're just on their phone too much, or they're just ditzy, or they're just unfocused, and they just think that, oh, they'll just outgrow it. And if they have true ADHD, they don't outgrow it. They just learn to cope or not cope with it. Um, and one of the biggest things too is that I think parents blame themselves. They blame themselves for waiting too long. They blame themselves for being overly punitive. And now oh, well, what if this whole time it was ADHD and I've been punishing them for something that they couldn't control?
Mhm.
And so this denial feels safer than facing it. And that could be a big thing, but I see a lot of parents beating themselves up for it because they're blaming themselves for why their kid is the way they are, or that they didn't notice it sooner.
Should have seen it, but they didn't, right? Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's right. So you've seen the difference, teens whose parents accept the ADHD diagnosis versus teens whose parents kind of refuse it, are afraid of the labeling, like you said. Um, what would you say? What do supportive parents do radically different than the denying parents never do?
Mhm.
What's the difference here?
So I feel what I often see is that supportive parents, even when they don't get an official diagnosis, but they see the signs, they they lean in to the education for themselves as well, not just on social media, but they truly get educated, and they lean into the education for themselves and for their teenager. They scaffold, so meaning they place supports in place. So teaching their teen and collaborating with their teen about like, well, what's hard about completing your homework, or what's hard about focusing in class, or whatever it is. And they're brainstorming and collaborating on potential solutions together. Okay, well, that didn't work, mom. Okay, well, then let's try this instead. So they do a lot of that scaffolding and support, and they lead with a lot of compassion. So they're like, yeah, I know that it's hard because it's hard. I get it. So let's make it less hard. And so I find that a lot of these supportive parents that, once they can get past the guilt, because that's normal, they can then lean into those pieces. And I see a lot of parents who handle it well as well. They move from punishment to more problem solving. So rather than punishing the kid for the thing that they're not able to do, they realize that, oh, it's a skill thing, it's a skill capability. It's not that they desire to fail. And they move more into problem solving, more of a solution focused mindset. And but I find that denying parents, on the flip side, they will push harder, they will dig in their heels, they will lecture, they will punish, they'll do all the opposite things. Blame the kid, blame the parent, blame themselves, blame the teachers, and that just leads to more shame and withdrawal. And the downside of it is I work with a lot of adults for executive function coaching who have ADHD, but maybe didn't find out about it till adulthood or always had it, but their parents didn't understand it because we didn't really educate ourselves on those things, right? And so there's so many, especially men that I see, they are so wrapped up in shame and guilt constantly, and it is really hard to break through that because it's been so ingrained for so long. They have these internal messages that have just stuck. Oh, of course I didn't do blank because I'm a loser. I never do anything right. And so I think those messages, we really have to be aware of that so that we could change the narrative as they grow.
For our kids as well, yeah. But of course, we understand that parents are afraid of labeling, of self-blame, the grief that comes with it. But what would you say? What's something you wish every parent could see about what really happens to a teenager when their ADHD, goes not diagnosed but unrecognized?
I believe one of the biggest things is the teen internalizes failure. They internalize the negative message. So they say, I'm dumb, I'm lazy, I'm broken, I'm stupid, I'm not good enough. Everything is easy for everybody else but me. And that's why we often see a lot of co occurring diagnoses of depression and ADHD and anxiety and ADHD. Because if you keep thinking that, because what we do know is that ADHD teens get more negative messages than any other type of teen. And so they hear these things, the teacher saying things, their parents saying things, their siblings saying things, their friends saying things, and they start to believe that's who they are, that that's their character, that they are just flawed. And so I think that's one of the biggest things is that this internalized negative core belief forms. And it erodes their self-esteem and it increases the risk of these things like anxiety and depression. And when it goes unrecognized and not validated, it can lead to a cycle of underachievement and feelings of hopelessness and learned helplessness. Well, nothing I do works anyway, so why even try? And so I think that's why it's super important that whether you get an official diagnosis or acknowledge it, and be able to work with your teens. So it's not about a label, it's about being able to understand why they struggle the way they do. And I think that it's important to note too that we tend to normalize medical diagnoses often, and yet we still stigmatize mental health diagnoses or neurological diagnoses. And it would be just like, if you were having a hard time with, like, I was struggling with having reactions to certain foods. And I kept going to doctors and going to doctors, and they kept like, oh, well, whatever. And they're just dismissing it. And when I finally got more of an understanding, then I'm like, oh, so I need to avoid these because of this allergy panel. Okay. So now I feel better because I could change my habits, my behaviors, what I put in my body. It wasn't because it was a label. It was helped me to understand myself so that I could behave differently. And I think we have to treat a diagnosis like ADHD the same way. Like, let's normalize it that it's not a death sentence. It's meant to educate and inform so that we could behave differently and our teen can feel differently about themselves.
And be supportive, right?
Yeah.
But I believe, so much of that disconnection or conflict, comes down to parents really demanding something that their child simply cannot give to them, right?
Mhm.
Um, what would you say? What's the one demand that parents make most often that, an ADHD brain simply cannot deliver, no matter how much effort the
Hmm.
teen actually puts in?
Oh, there's so many. But I think the one I hear consistently is the task initiation. So starting something. And it is, I've heard across the board, I've read this several times, I hear it from parents, from teens with ADHD. Starting tasks or the executive function skill of task initiation feels painful. It's like, oh gosh, laundry. Well, what's hard about it? That's the question I often ask. Well, it's going to take forever, or getting up to eat. Well, why didn't you eat? Why did you go all day without eating? Oh, because it's just, I don't even know what to eat. And if I start and then I don't know what to cook and it just takes forever. Like this time management piece. But it's the starting. The starting is painful. Homework, laundry, taxes, whatever it is that they need to do, they feel like that the project, if it feels like it's too overwhelming, if it'll take too many steps, if the perceived length of time is too long, if they would rather be doing something else, if it's too boring, if it's too monotonous, they just have such a hard time. So I think that demand that we just start, that just start is extremely hard for them. And I see that across the board. And I think the second one would probably be the sustained focus and attention. So then they do start and then they're like everywhere else. So the sustained attention can be really hard because they just get distracted by different levels of stimuli. So yeah, so it's unrealistic to expect them to just start or to sustain unless we provide the scaffold, the supports, and things in place to help them focus.
Mhm. Any ideas on regarding task starting?
Oh, yes, I have lots. The one that I find that works, there's two that I find work really good. One is the Pomodoro. So Pomodoro meaning tomato in Italian. There are apps that you can download for free. It's just a tomato, and it's like a old school kitchen timer. You can use a kitchen timer as well. And it's the whole concept of, because of the time blindness and thinking that it'll take forever, you want to put parameters around the time. So it's not that you have to do 20 math problems. You just have to do 5 in 15 minutes. Set a timer and you work nonstop, no distractions, no texting, no TikToking, no dance trend, nothing. You do just that task for that time and you have that time crunch. And then you take a quick break, really quick, 2 minutes max, maybe three, because you want to continue the momentum. So the Pomodoro works really well. Hank something. What's his last name? He developed an app as well, that is so cute. I've been using it for a lot of my clients. I've been using it for myself, and it is a bean. Let's see if I can find it. But it's Focus Friend. It's called, and it is the cutest thing because it is this little bean who knits socks while you do the task, and the longer you do the task, the more socks he knits, and it plays this calming music. So as long as your phone is left alone, he will continue to knit. And if you
So
pick
it's
it up,
kind of body doubling.
right, it is. It's like body doubling. And if you stop and you pick up your phone, he drops his knitting stuff. Yeah, so those kinds of things where you have a timer or an app to focus on a task is a really great one because you place parameters. Another really great one that I like to tell a lot of students is writing down your tasks that you have to do and putting the stop and start time, and do it within like 20-minute time frames. Like literally put in what is your perceived time that it will take, and then writing down the actual time. Yes. Because again, if it feels like it takes forever, no, we're only doing it for 20 minutes. And then sometimes they'll discover, oh, I had to just, study 20 vocabulary words. I thought it was going to take 20 minutes, only took 10. Great. So you're able to go through your list 3 times instead of just once. So putting those start and stop times, I find that task initiation is best helped by making time go from abstract to concrete.
Nice, nice,
Yeah.
nice. Brilliant ideas. Um, what about protection of the children? Because I believe that, parents, they kind of believe they're protecting their child, but sometimes protection is really their own projection, right? How dangerous would you say it is when parent confuses their own standard of success, let's say, with their child's actual capacity?
I would say it's very dangerous because you cannot live your life or expectations through your teen. That is very dangerous. Um, because you're not them and they're not you. and they're not your second chance. I think it's important that parents do their own work, and I think that's where a lot of parents, we beat ourselves up, myself included, because sometimes we feel like we were failed in some way or that we failed in some way, and then we try to make it up by kind of projecting onto our teen. Well, I sucked at sports, and so I'm going to make sure they're in club and school, and they're going to do everything that I couldn't do because I didn't have the opportunity or the finances or the resources or whatever it was. And so it really invalidates your teen's lived experience. They don't have to be you, and they don't have to live up to your expectations. I think we still have expectations of our teens, but it needs to be based on their values and their goals and their personality and their desires, not ours. And because it can create a lot of shame and pressure. Because if you were the all-star athlete, for example, and they, fall and stumble walking down the hallway and they're so uncoordinated and sports is the last thing on their mind, then they probably don't want to do what you want them to do. And so I think it's okay that they're different from you and that we don't make them feel bad for that they are their own person. And then kids will often feel unseen and disconnected. They don't feel important or significant, which can damage the relationship because I'm not living up to what dad wants or what mom wants or what they think I should be doing because this is what their plans were for me. And then they lose themselves. They forget who they are or they never develop that sense of
Mm,
self.
mm. That makes all sense.
Mhm.
Um, okay, then there's this part gets kind of tricky. A child, might be gifted in one way, but emotionally fragile in another. And I think parents rarely know which is which, right? So help us out. What would be, the framework for determining their capacity, not just academically, but everything like emotionally, socially, psychologically? How do we determine that?
I think a big part of it is we look at the whole child, not just the academics. So that, yeah, you may have a child who's very gifted in reading and spelling, but they're terrible in math. And it's okay. It's okay to know that maybe you really push them to continue to develop those skills that they're already good at. I think we focus a lot of energy and resources on things that our kids are bad at. And not only is that exhausting, but it feels embarrassing, it feels humiliating, and it's like, and it's so funny because then as adults you do these coaching programs and all these things and people are like, operate within your zone of genius, delegate the rest. And it's like, well, kids can't delegate their schoolwork because that's cheating, but but it's the same kind of concept. Like, why do we spend so much energy trying to develop a skill set where they're bad at? Why don't we continue to develop those things that they're really excelling at and then providing some support and scaffolding in the other areas, but not putting so much effort? So, say they get straight A's in the areas that are really great, but maybe C's in the other areas that they're struggling at, then maybe C's are the best they can do. Um, and that's really hard for parents to accept because they're like, no, I'm lowering my standards. No, you're not. You're making it more realistic for the child so your child can excel in the way they need to. And you need to ask yourself, like, well, what drains them? What energizes them? Where do they thrive? So that way you can put the supports in the areas where they're not as strong in, but really build them up in the areas where they excel at. So they can feel like, wow, I rock in these areas. I'm really artistic and I'm really great in these areas. And this is not as good. So I'll get a little bit more support, but I'm not going to beat myself up because I'm not excelling like I am in these areas. Most people don't excel in all areas. So the same goes for our kids in school. Like they don't have to excel in every single
Brilliant.
subject.
Exactly. And speaking of that, the capacity and being brilliant, what would you say is one sign of growth that parents constantly overlook because it doesn't show on paper because we're so focused on, the academics, the grades, the exams.
Emotional regulation. That is a huge, because emotional intelligence is just as, if not more important than intelligence in terms of academics. Because If you don't have emotional regulation and emotional intelligence, then you don't know how to bounce back after a failed test grade. When a friend ghosts you or dumps you, when a teacher or professor talks poorly at you or is not kind to you, if they don't have emotional regulation, then they don't know how to bounce back from those things. And whenever I do workshops with teachers and schools and districts, I really emphasize that the first couple months of school should really be focusing on building executive function skills, helping kids with emotional regulation and frustration tolerance and impulse control and attention and task initiation. Like, if they don't have those skills, then when you get to a hard unit or content in a subject, they're going to fall apart. And so all the stuff that you teach them isn't going to matter if they don't have the basic skills. So I think emotional regulation is a big one. I think another big one is being able to repair ruptures in relationships, because peer relationships in the teen years is the one of the most important things for them. It's extremely important. And so if they don't know how to bounce back after feeling rejected or having a little fight or having a disagreement with a peer, then it'll, again, because if they have ADHD, they can perceive it as a failure in some way, because a lot of ADHD teens do struggle with friendships because of their poor attention. They're not listening to details in conversations. They're speaking out of turn. They're saying things that they don't mean, and so that's a big one. And the last one I would say, so emotional regulation, repairing friendships. The last one I would say was probably getting out of bed and showing up on a hard day. And why I mention that is because a lot of teenagers have a hard time going to sleep and getting up. But with ADHD teens, it's even harder because their brain is going, going, going all day. And then you need to go to sleep and they can't turn their brain off. So they have the hardest time initiating sleep. And that's why they go to their phones and YouTube and all these things, because it feels exciting because they're still trying to get stimulation. And because their brain is going, going all day, they have a hard time slowing down and just shutting it off, which is what you need to do when you go to sleep. So then they're super exhausted. And then they have to show up. And we know that an exhausted brain has an even harder time regulating emotions and paying attention and having good memory and having a good attitude. And so it really impacts their brain even more.
Agreed, agreed. Um, there's also one other thing that probably stands out because ADHD rarely shows up alone with ADHD teens. Um, Anxiety is almost always tagging along, right?
Mhm.
Um, what would you say? How does anxiety disguise itself in teenagers so effectively that parents misread it completely?
Yes, that is a great question that happens a lot. So I mentioned earlier the co-occurring diagnoses. ADHD and anxiety, ADHD and depression tend to co-occur quite often. Anxiety often looks like irritability and moodiness, avoidance, procrastination, perfectionism. I remember when I learned this several years ago about how procrastination, perfectionism, anxiety tend to be besties in this little gang, that I don't think people realize that perfectionism is anxiety, because you keep doing it and doing it and doing it until it's exactly right, until it feels just right. Procrastination occurs because of anxiety and perfectionism, because I'll just keep putting it off, because if it's not right, then I won't start. Or if it can't be perfect, then I won't start. So whenever you see procrastination and perfectionism where parents may see it as laziness or just finish, there can be this underlying anxiety. Well, if I can't do it perfectly, and that could be cleaning my room. If I can't clean my room perfectly to your standard, then I'm just not going to start. If I can't do this assignment and get an A because it's your standard or mine or the teacher's, then I just won't start it at all. And it's not always a conscious thing. It's really, really very unconscious. So parents often misinterpret this procrastination as defiance or this moodiness of having an attitude, when it could be just an underlying worry. And so, yeah, anxiety and ADHD look similar, because then they're having a hard time initiating the task initiation for ADHD, when it could be procrastination because of anxiety. Yeah. So anxiety really hides under procrastination. It hides under overthinking. refusal to try, not feeling good enough. So yeah, it's really gets muddied in that way. And what I have found is that sometimes I'll get a teenager in my office who presents with this blaring anxiety because they're a straight A student. They're a great kid. Parents like, oh, they're amazing. They've been my good kid, never had any problems. So we treat the anxiety, and because they're such a good kid, they get through anxiety treatment real quick and perfectly because that's what they do. And then the anxiety goes away, and I'm like, wait, what's happening? Oh, they actually have ADHD. And so it's really common for one to disguise as the other and for them to co-occur.
Mhm. Um, and on the other hand, there's sadness, right? There's depression. Parents often, see the silence in there, the closed door, the eye rolls, all part of that, just thinking it's a teenager, it's being a teenager. But ADHD teens are experts at masking, right? So, what are those quiet, almost invisible signs that sadness has actually tipped into something more, into danger? Even when everything on the outside kind of looks normal teenager.
So depression in teens doesn't always show up as sadness like it does in adults. It often shows up as irritability and agitation. So we will often see this irritability and agitation, this moodiness, and that's one of the primary things. And of course, it can still show up as real deep sadness. But the two things we often look for, if especially if we're not looking at anything else, but for depression, because there's several symptoms, but as we look for the irritability, agitation, or this moodiness or sadness, more days, more often than not. And then what is called anhedonia, or loss of interest in things you used to enjoy. Those are the two biggest areas. So they always love to do sports, and now they have no desire. They loved hanging out with friends, now they don't want to do it. So anything that they really loved, and that's hard because teenagers start to change with their interests anyway. So they may stop enjoying things they used to enjoy. So that could be tricky, but what we want to pay attention to that is like, do they just feel like there's been a shift in the things they value and are interested in, and it just seems like they're changing in that kind of way. um, but other things to really look out for is withdrawal from friends and family, because like you said, they're really great at masking. So it's a subtle withdrawal, more time in their room, more time getting triggered by little things that you ask them. How was your day? Oh, you're always on my case, bro. Like, it's like, dude, I just asked how your day was. So like they're just, this subtle withdrawal and this moodiness, this kind of explosive attitude that's different from how you were used to. um, a lot of things that often show up with depression is this, and it's so sad to witness. It's like this slowness, like everything is slow. They're blinking slow and speaking slow and moving slow and doing things slowly. Like it's this slowness, and that's a really big part of it. That this kid who used to be very active and engaged, it's just like they're dragging, like just molasses. They're just dragging. And um and so yeah, I think those are the things that often show up. And then of course you'll see other things, maybe changes in appetite or weight, either increase or decrease. Changes in sleep, increased or decreased. What else do we see? We often will see things that maybe more talk about death, or asking about death. That's when it's more moderate to severe. But these are just things to, oh, and changes in concentration. And that's why depression and ADHD can muddy each other. Because when a depressed brain is, when it's occurring, they don't remember as much. They're forgetful. They think, because they're thinking slowly, they're not processing information as quickly. So they're very forgetful. They can't track conversations. And so, again, that's why ADHD and depression can look alike and be confusing for one another. And that's why I often tell parents, when you get an evaluation, you want to make sure the person is looking at all things, not just ADHD, because it can disguise itself just like teenagers can disguise things.
So how do we help them? I think that stepping in isn't simple, because too much force and you push them further away, too little and you risk missing something huge, a crisis. How do
Mhm.
we actually get involved without smothering the kid?
Yeah, that is a delicate balance, right? So, one of the biggest things is this is always my default when parents are like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, always lead with curiosity. Always lead with curiosity, because it's so easy when they roll their eyes at you or like, oh, bro, get off my back. That we're like, don't talk to me that way. Watch your tone. Go to your room. Give me your phone. And we go to, well, instead, just take a breath, because you're probably reacting this way because you feel offended. You feel like, how dare you after everything I've done for you? Or you like, I would never have gotten away with that if I was your age, right? Like we think all these things and like get out of your head and step into their shoes, lead with curiosity. And if all else fails, not don't even know what else and how else to respond. Look at what is driving the behavior. What is going on that's driving this behavior? You have a teen who's rolling their eyes, giving you a bunch of sass. Instead of it looking at as they don't respect me, why are they doing what they're doing? Well, they're just trying to get attention. Okay, so if you think it's attention, then why are they trying to get attention in this kind of negative way when they could be getting attention in all kinds of ways? So lead with curiosity and get curious in terms of what's driving the behavior is so important. Like, hey, I noticed that you and I have been at each other a lot. I've been yelling at you a lot, and you've been shutting your door and kind of not wanting to hang out like you usually do. What's been going on? And they might still slam the door, but that's okay. Now you've opened the conversation. I want parents to feel encouraged that just because you don't get an immediate win doesn't mean that a win hasn't occurred. And think of it like gardening. You're planting seeds, you're watering the seeds, you're fertilizing the soil. When you're gardening, you're not seeing the result right away. It takes time. It takes time. Lots of things are going on under the surface. The roots are trying to find water and nutrients, and then you see the seed that break open and then it comes out. And we have to look at parenting and connecting with our teenager in the same way, that you're not always going to see the results right away. And it doesn't mean you failed, and it doesn't mean they've totally shut you out, but you have to continue to reach, and form that connection and repair if there's been something that has been broken.
So is that about showing them that we care because we keep on getting back? What's
Yeah,
the what?
absolutely. It's telling them that your problems are not too big for me. Your problems are not too big for me, and that I am here regardless of how you show up. It's unconditional love. That's what it is. You're not getting taken advantage of because you're showing up and saying that you care and they're still shutting you out. Like, you're showing that I love you, I adore you, I'm here for you regardless of how you show up. That unconditional love is hard. I think we say, "Oh, I love all my kids the same." Well, it's hard to show up. It's easy to show up for the easy kids. It's easy to show up for the kids who always does their homework and cleans their room and is, "Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am." Like, it's super easy. But then what about the one who shuts you out and doesn't want to participate in family dinners and is failing in school and is not opening up to you? That's hard to love them through that in those moments, because then what parents do, they blame themselves and shame themselves. What did I do? How did I go wrong? And so I think it's super important for them to know that even when your emotions are out of control for you, they're not for me. I can handle it. And you and your problems are not too much for me. And your problems are yours. And I'm not going to take them on me. I will be there for you in it until you're ready to be rescued from them.
Okay, I love that. That's brilliant. Okay, so it's pretty clear that ADHD adolescence, it's even harder, even messier, than the regular one. Um, and parents often respond to all of that by trying kind of to tighten the control, right? But here's my question. What's this what's the single biggest misunderstanding about ADHD teens that causes parents to push further when they should actually kind of pull back?
I think a big part is they believe that control fixes ADHD. That if I stand by the door while they clean their room, if I'm hovering over them while they do their homework, if I take away their phone and take away all their lifeline to the outside world, if I control them enough, they will be better. I can fix them. And and ADHD then is just a phase, or it's just something that I will pull out of them in some way. And it's like, no, that's not what happens. What you do is then you get that shame cycle, and the kid who internalizes these messages. Oh, well, if my parent is punishing me this much and thinking that there's something wrong with me, then maybe something really is wrong with me. So what works better is the collaboration. So that way you're not getting in this push pull. And what works better is having flexibility and giving them some ownership to then mess up, fail, rework the thing. So, hey, let's try the Pomodoro, set the timer, let's do it for 30 minutes. Oh, 30 minutes is way too long. Okay, let's try 20. So, giving them some ownership so that way they can feel like these are some things that I can try. And just because it doesn't work doesn't mean I failed. I can, failure, I think, it's just a way of saying, okay, like, let's try another way until I get to something that actually works for me. We can fail up. It doesn't have to be like this death sentence. And we can show them that just because something didn't work out as planned, it's not a bad thing. It's not necessarily like failure in the worst form. It's failure in like, oh, it's telling me what I need more of. So I think the collaboration is the better, and the flexibility that you don't have to keep parenting the same way. And a big thing that I tell parents a lot is that the way you parented your child when they were 5 or 12 is not the way that you parent them when they're 15. And the way you parent your ADHD teen cannot be the same as your non ADHD teen. They're very different, and your parenting strategies have to evolve and have to adjust with that.
That's a great perspective of it. Um, in one of the earlier questions, you were mentioning, our values. Usually, what matters to parents often isn't aligned with what matters to our teens, right?
Yes.
Um, what would you say? How dangerous is that mismatch in our values? And maybe how can parents recognize when they're fighting battles that they don't matter at all to their kids?
Yes, it is normal for teens to have values that are different from their parents. It's actually a developmental stage and right, actually. You are building values and beliefs and ideas as a parent to your teen. You raise them up with certain values that you should be doing that. You should. But what's happening is as they start to go into their teen years, they form this sense of individuation, which means I'm an individual separate from you as my parent. When they're a baby, when they're little, like everything is about mommy and daddy and grandma and grandpa, like everything, they're so fused in a sense. Your identity is wrapped up in them, theirs is wrapped up in yours. And but then they start to become their own person. They start to separate. And peers, the friends, are more important than you are. They want to hang out with them more, for example. And then they start to think like, well, this is how you raised us, but I don't really believe that. This is what you like to do, but I don't really like that. This is what you like to eat, but I prefer this. Like that is something that they do. And so it can be very dangerous if you think that they have to follow your exact same values as they're becoming an adult, and because it can create conflict, it erodes trust. And then parents just need to ask themselves, like, is this worth dying on this hill for? I did a video about like in my Instagram how parents can fall apart over things like a 18-year-old in college getting a nose ring, for example. Like maybe it's not something you would want to do, but is it worth destroying the relationship over? Or them getting a tattoo, or them voting differently than you, or they enjoy things differently than you. Like, is it worth destroying the relationship over because they have their own set of values? So I think we want to focus more on the safety and the respect and the effort, and again, being curious. So if they believe in something that is not really what you agree with, be curious. Oh, well, that's interesting perspective. Tell me more about that. How did you come to understand that? Or why are you feeling so passionate about this cause? Or tell me about that nose ring or that tattoo on your torso. Like be curious about it, even though you may be freaking out inside. You have to ask yourself, well, why is this such a big deal to me? Is it just because I'm following my values from my parents and this is just the way it's supposed to be? Is it really that big of a deal? And some things might be, don't get me wrong. Right? Some things might be, but I think we have to still lead with curiosity, whether they're making really genuinely poor choices or just choices that are different from yours.
When you're speaking all of that, there's a lot of tolerance there, right?
Yes.
Uh, even with the collaboration, flexibility, giving them ownership, leading with curiosity. I believe, though, parents, equal tolerance with weakness a lot of times.
Mm,
Um, but some, behaviors are worth letting go because the fighting will just, break the trust that we have for built. Um, Help us out. What are the ADHD behaviors that parents should absolutely tolerate, and what are the ones that they should never let slide?
that is a great question. So, and again, the parents are not always going to agree with this, but I I see it and live it and I hear it over and over again, but it's not worth losing your relationships over. So, I think parents need to learn how to tolerate messy rooms. I'll give a caveat to that in a moment. Um, Fidgeting behaviors and unconventional routines. So, messy rooms. Should a kid's room look like a city dump? No. You want them to learn skills to know how to maintain their space. However, organization, task initiation, planning, focus, follow through, time management, processing speed, working memory are all required executive function skills to clean a messy room. It requires so much skill. And I believe that if their room is consistently and continually messy, then you have to ask yourself, then is it that they have too many things? Is it that they need better systems? Do they need more body doubling where I help them do it alongside them and give them strategies to do it so that when they leave my house, they know how to better do it? Do I just let it go because they will eventually figure it out? Or they won't. Or they won't. But is it worth ruining your relationship over because the room is messy? And so I think we have to explore that. Like, so, and to ask them, is their messy room inconvenient for them in some way? You have to take it outside of your realm. Like maybe you cannot stand seeing it, but how is the way that I often get teens to think about their behaviors and change it is they have to look at how is this behavior inconvenient for them. So having a messy room, how is it inconvenient for you? Well, I can never find my clothes, or they're always dirty, or I can't ever find my homework, or I feel embarrassed to have friends over, whatever it is. So then helping them identify what their motivation is, so that way they can move into a state where they can do it better. Whenever I've done that with kids, whatever it is, messy rooms, homework, phone time, eating better, if I can tap into their inconvenience, their review of inconvenience, it works almost every single time. Because then it's not about what I want or about what their parents want or what the teachers want. It's what they want. So we have to flip it about what's in it for them. Um, and same thing with fidgeting. Like they fidget, and parents think, oh, you're not paying attention. Listen to the doctor, listen to the teacher. Well, that movement actually helps them to focus. So we need to be able to tolerate that's more about you than it is about them. And then the unconventional routines, it's like, well, maybe they do things in a different order. Maybe they load the dishwasher differently than you. And maybe it is a train wreck, right?
Yeah,
But
sometimes it's hard to understand. Yeah.
it's just how they do it. Like, why is your way better? It might be, right? But again, they have to discover their own thing as well. So, so yeah, I think those are the things you tolerate. The things that you should never, yes, never let slide is unsafe behaviors. So drugs, drinking, unprotected sex if that's just they're just not ready for it, mature enough, um, sneaking out of the house, getting on shady websites. Those things you should never. Any unsafe behaviors, cruelty to animals, siblings, you, friends. That includes physical aggression, psychological manipulation, any of those kinds of things that should never be tolerated. And then complete withdrawal. If you have a teen who's completely shut out and shut down, that you need to do something about that, because that could be a sign of depression that is rapidly progressing, and that could lead to really bad things. So you want to make sure that any complete shutdown and withdrawal, you do not let slide. You have to address that.
Yeah. Yeah. And get help if you're not moving
Absolutely.
forward. Right. Right. Speaking of that, probably not every parent has access to psychologist or specialist, right? Some are just trying to figure it out day by day. What would you say are the practical daily tools that parents can use at home to support an ADHD teen without professional training?
Mhm. So structure and routine.
Hmm.
So having a calendar that is shared with the family, that is also each individual person can have on their phone, their device, and the family calendar electronically best, so it can be communicated. I think having structure and routines is so important for their ADHD brain, because they get lost in the weeds. And if they don't have a beginning start time, if things aren't maybe color coded or visual, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So it needs to be very specific, some structure routines. So then with that, visual reminders, some maybe checklists, timers, those kinds of things, anything that can be visual. Because if they have things in a drawer, if they have things in a book or a planner, those things, if they don't see it, it's gone. It doesn't even exist. So it needs to be out front. Um, a big one is breaking tasks into chunks. So like putting like the homework. I'm going to do this from 6 o'clock to 6:20, and then take a 3 minute break, and then 6:25 to this, whatever it is, like putting things into chunks. So rather than, oh, I have this big project that's due in 3 months. No, you have research for the project due in a week, right? So you break it down bit by bit, because they operate in this now, not now. If it's not due now, it's just not due. So you want to make sure that it's broken down in chunks. And the biggest one is celebrate the effort, not just the outcome. Any movement is movement. And James Clear talks about that in his book Atomic Habits, where it's like, right, 1% improvement. It's compound interest. So any little improvement is improvement. If they cleaned one corner of their city dump room, that's improvement, right? Any progress is progress.
I agree. I agree. Um, Lastly, I think both parents and kids, kind of say the same thing. I just want to feel valued, appreciated. Um, but what would you say is this fundamental gap between those two definitions of feeling valued and maybe also how can either side ever meet in the middle of that being
So
valued?
parents feel valued often when they are listened to and feel respected.
Yeah.
Teens feel valued when they are accepted as they are, just exactly how they show up. So meeting in the middle would be respect and acceptance. Parents are respected and the teen is accepted, and so that can form their connection. So the biggest part of meeting people where they're at and giving them what they need is what we want to focus on. And so that way the parent can express, well, when you do this, I don't feel like you respect me. When you roll your eyes or don't say good morning back, or when you slam your door, I don't feel like you respect me. And the teen might say, well, I don't feel like you're hearing me when I say that I've had a rough day at school and you want to ask me how was math. Like, I just want you to just ask me how I'm doing, or just hang out without talking, or we can watch videos together. Just let me be, right? And so if they can meet in the middle, and I've met with so many parents and ADHD teens who, the teen is like, my parent hates me. Parent is like, I don't hate you. Well, you're always yelling at me all the time, but you don't do it to my siblings, so I figure you must hate me. The parent is like, well, I thought you hated me. Well, why did you think that? Well, because you're always rolling your eyes and never want to be around me. Well, because you're always asking me dumb questions. Like, I don't, so they're realizing neither of them hates the other, but yet they're operating and behaving as if there's some hatred and some stuff going on, but it's all goes back to because one didn't feel respected and one didn't feel respected and one didn't feel accepted. And so that can really fracture connection, and because we're miscommunicating, we're not operating on the same playing field.
That's beautiful. Okay, for the end, I have a couple of rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
Ready? Okay.
Yes.
What's the non-negotiable thing an ADHD teen needs from a parent, even when their behavior seems to scream exactly the opposite?
Unconditional love.
Right. We were just talking about that, right?
Yes. Just unconditional love and just believing in them. Just believing them and loving them where they're at.
If an ADHD teen swears at their parents in anger, um, is that disrespect or is that dysregulation?
It is most often dysregulation, but it doesn't excuse it. It just explains it.
Right. So we don't address it.
We do address it, but we address the behavior. We address the intention behind the behavior. What is the need behind the behavior? So don't just look at the behavior, which looks at like disrespect. You just cuss me out. Well, what is driving that behavior? Because there's some dysregulation, but there may be some other things that are going on that we don't notice, that we don't see. So we do address it. You don't pretend like it's not there, but don't treat it as just as an excuse or punishing. You need to get curious about what's driving it.
What's the one thing ADHD teens wish they could tell their parents, but almost never do?
Hmm. That they're trying hard. They're trying harder than they think. Let me say it like how they would say it. I am trying harder than you think, and I'm doing the best that I can. So please don't give up on me.
Love that. Love that. You call ADHD kids your favorite group to work with,
Mhm.
right? What do you see in them that the rest of the world might miss?
I love their creativity and their energy and their humor and resilience. They are, because they're neurodivergent, they literally think outside the box. They see things from a different perspective. And I love that about them. And they come up with solutions and ideas. A lot of the ideas that I've come up with in working with them is because of them. Like they are so amazing in the way they think, and they really truly see the world differently. And I think that's their superpower. I believe that's why so many successful individuals who have ADHD are successful, because they think outside the box. They look at solutions for things that other people haven't thought of, and I think that makes them amazing.
That's so true. And the last question: there are dozens of online parenting events out there. As you know, you've been to a lot of them. In your view, what sets this summit apart from the rest?
I think what sets this summit apart from the rest is that it's very practical, it's very compassionate, it's not shame based, and it centers parents and teens and shows what makes them unique, in giving parents tools that can really help them parent more effectively. Because I think parents don't need more education necessarily, but they need more compassion and more ideas that they are doing the best that they can, but so is their teen.
Okay, Dr. Lockhart, we could go on and on and on, but unfortunately, we have to finish this. If parents want more information about you and how to help their ADHD kids, what can they turn to?
So one of the biggest places they can go to is on my Instagram page at dr.anlouise.lockhart. I have lots of resources, videos, tools that they can reach out for. Also my website at anewdaysa.com if they want parent coaching or executive function coaching for themselves, their spouse, or their kid, their teenager. And then I also have my book that has come out, Love the Teen You Have. And it's a guide for parents of tweens and teens ages 9 to 19. They can get the audiobook version narrated by me or the hardcover as well, and wherever books are sold. And that could be a really good resource for them, whether they have an ADHD teen, a teen who's anxious, depressed, the whole range, sibling relationships, bullying. I cover all of the issues that parents will come up that experience. So I have that as well as a resource.
Congrats on that. Thank you
Thank
so much again, Dr. Lockhart, for helping us understand the hidden struggles of our ADHD teens, and for a brilliant reminder that every moment that parents choose curiosity, right, over judgment is a step toward building the trust and the connection that they need actually to thrive. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Thank you again, and take care.
thank you too. I appreciate it.
Are you loving the advice and insights you're getting? Well, you can get lifetime access to all the summit session when you upgrade your ticket to the VIP pass. This means you're not only getting unlimited access to the sessions, you will also unlock the audio version of the entire summit, expert action blueprint with key takeaways and action steps, English subtitles, and a brilliant workbook that will help you implement everything that you get. You see, the VIP Pass is purposely designed to help you digest all of the content from the summit and implement this advice in your own life. And as you know, the internet is flooded with advice about ADHD. But how much of it actually comes from credible sources? How many times have you been led astray by unknown or unverified advice? Well, unlimited access to the entire summit is a place where information is not only just abundant, it's also trustworthy. So, if you want to be confident in the ADHD strategies every step of the way, then I think this is a place to start. I'm totally positive that you're gonna love the VIP Pass and all of the valuable resources that we have created for you. It's like having a personal library of expert knowledge right in your pocket. And here's the best part: if for any reason at all you don't love it, we'll refund you in full. No questions asked. So you really have nothing to lose. Grab your VIP pass now and don't miss this opportunity.